Morning, Mustangs, and welcome to the show. I'm Alessandra Veron.
And I'm Joe Spadorcia. Due to the Memorial Day Assembly, we will have a short show today. Sign up with teams of 8 for a dodgeball tournament on June 13th to raise money for the Latin trip next year. Cost is $5 per player. See Miss Holmes with any questions.
Please join Miss Bradley and Miss Goss for Library Lunch Book Club next Wednesday in the library. They will be discussing Noggin by John Corey Whaley. Copies will be available in the library. That's all we have for today. Would freshmen and sophomores please head to the auditorium for the Memorial Day Assembly, and everyone else, stay tuned.
Have a great long weekend, Mustangs.
Good job.
Good morning and welcome to Norwood High School's Memorial Day Assembly. Audience members, as this is a memorial service, we ask that at this time that you courteously give us the full benefit of your attention by powering down your cell phones. This is different than silencing your cell phones. Please power them down so we can capture the appropriate mood for what is a memorial service for many of our Norwood High School grads. This weekend, the nation will mourn those and remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of this country. Today, Norwood High School remembers those graduates who made that ultimate sacrifice for us as well. In particular, we will recognize the 100th anniversary of the United States entry into World War I. At the beginning of World War I, young people about your age cheered, joined the military proudly, and were escorted off to service with cheers from crowds, large parades, and marching bands. In short time, however, people realized the horrific reality of what that conflict was. We will hear from some of the words of the soldiers who tried to make sense of the difficult situations that they faced in light of what should have been the flowering moments of their youth. At this time, I ask that you please rise for the playing of the national anthem.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Thank you.
All these tall guys. Principal Bourne, staff, administrative staff, teachers, counselors, most importantly you, the students, good morning. My name is Ted Mulvihill, and I'm very proud to serve the town of Norwood as its Director of Veterans Services and the Service Officer. Every year, and again, it is a great pleasure for me to be before you today on this Memorial Day Assembly. Every year I get a nice speech all typed up and neat and ready to go, and I say, you know what, let's just talk. We're all family, we're all friends, we're all Americans. So let's talk a little bit about the meaning behind Memorial Day. I do have notes here. Back on May 5th of 1868, there was an organization called the Grand Army of the Republic. The commander-in-chief of that organization was a general named John Logan, and he put out General Order 11. And he said that on the 30th of May in 1868, all veterans of the Union Army will put flowers on the graves of their fallen comrades. And actually, on that day, on May 30th, it happened at Arlington National Cemetery, and that was the first national observance of Memorial Day. That's the official party line as to how the holiday came to pass, but I prefer a more personal version. The story goes at a small cemetery in the South, the wives of Confederate fallen were in the cemetery decorating and sprucing up the graves of their fallen Confederate soldiers and loved ones. And off in the corner of that cemetery was a small section where Union soldiers had been buried. And the women spoke amongst themselves and they said, who will decorate their graves? Who will tend to them and remember them and honor them so far from their home and from their family? And amongst those women they said, well, we will. We will honor them and include them in our observances and in our hearts. So that to me is the essence of Memorial Day. It's remembrance, it's respect. Respect for the sacrifices that these brave men and women made on the field of battle. Remembrance of their service and their honor, and remembering their families as well. Soon you'll hear the names of 52 Norwood High School graduates who made that supreme sacrifice, going back from World War II right up through Afghanistan, where a friend of mine and neighbor, young Keith Benson, lost his life in Afghanistan. And I think there's an example I use to reinforce the fact of these young men and women in the prime of their lives. Joe Moakley was our congressman from this district years and years and years ago, before our present Congressman Stephen Lynch. And Joe lied about his age and enlisted in the Navy in World War II when he was 15 years old. Can I have a show of hands, please, of 15-year-olds in the room? How about that? You know, I mean, there are those who are born with a warrior spirit. And back in my day, during the Vietnam era, we were not unable to exhibit that warrior spirit because of the social mores and attitudes of the day. These days, that's a different ballgame. Young men and women of today's graduating classes can make that decision and do it proudly, and also they've earned the recognition and support of their fellow students, which is a blessing to me. The freedoms that we enjoy today are a direct result of the blood spilled on the battlefield, going back these many hundreds of years, by our American women, men and women, our citizen soldiers who rose in defense of our country. The best thing that I can tell and impart to you students today is to study hard. My definition of war is the breakdown of all communication. So by studying hard, remember this: you are the leaders of tomorrow. Several of you in this room will rise to levels of responsibility where you may in fact be a decision maker as to whether or not you will send our young men and women to war. So if you study hard and are prepared, we can maintain our avenues of communication and work out our differences so that we will not have to shed young American lives' blood. So that's important. It's something I want you to remember, and it's something I want you to keep in mind. I'm a proud graduate of the school from 1972, and I was very proud after graduation to enlist in the service and go serve my country as my dad did. And I'd also like to make it known to you folks that Principal Bourne's father was a United States Marine as well, and we thank him for his service. So remember and respect. Respect the service, respect their sacrifice, remember them, keep them in your heart, and remember this: those that fell on the field of battle gave all of their tomorrows for our today.
John William Streets, known as Will, wrote about the inspiration for his poems in a letter to the poetry publisher, Galloway Kyle, saying, "They were inspired while I was in the trenches, where I have been so busy I have had little time to polish them. I've tried to picture some thoughts that pass through a man's brain when he dies. I may not see the end of the poems, but I hope I live to do so. We soldiers have our views of life to express, though the boom of death is in our ears. We try to convey something of what we feel in this great conflict to those who think of us, and sometimes, alas, mourn our loss." Unfortunately, Will's desire to live to see his poems published was never fulfilled. On July 1st, 1916, Sergeant John William Streets moved with the 12th Battalion York and Lancaster Regiment into the assembly trenches behind John Copse on the Somme battlefield. The attack was launched at 7:30. Will's battalion went in on the second wave. Will was wounded and made his way back to the British line to get his wounds seen to. He was seen going to help another wounded man, but he subsequently disappeared. Will's body was missing for 10 months before it was identified. It was found in the area of no man's land. On May 1st, 1917, he was officially listed as killed.
A Soldier's Cemetery by John William Streets. Behind that long and lonely trenched line to which men come and go, where brave men die, there is yet an unmarked and unknown shrine, a broken plot, a soldier's cemetery. There lie the flower of youth, the men who scorned to live so died when languished liberty. Across their graves, flowerless and unadorned, still scream the shells of each artillery. When war shall cease, this lonely unknown spot of many a pilgrimage will be the end, and flowers will shine in this now barren plot, and fame upon it through the years descend. But many a heart upon each simple cross will hang the grief, the memory of its loss.
Le by Guillaume Apollinaire. Jeune homme de 20 ans qui a vu des choses si affreuses. Que pensais-tu des hommes de ton enfance? Tu connais la bravoure et la ruse. Tu as vu la mort en face plus de 100 fois. Tu ne sais pas ce que c'est que la vie. Transmets ton épidité à ceux qui viendront après toi. Jeune homme, tu es joyeux, ta mémoire est ensanglantée. Ton âme est rouge aussi, de joie. Tu as observé la vie de ceux qui sont morts près de toi. Tu as de la décision. Il est 17 heures et tu saurais mourir. Sinon mieux que tes aînés, du moins plus pieusement. Car tu connais mieux la mort que la vie, au-dessus d'autrefois, l'entre immémorial.
In a moment, I'll be reading the names of the Norwood High School graduates who gave the ultimate sacrifice in combat. And as I did last year, I want to particularly call your attention to the names of World War II. And imagine that that 4-year conflict would take basically what would be a high school population of a grade 9 through 12. And that would be the ages of which that many of those combatants were. And when you think about how tragic it is to lose a friend, just keep that in mind as we look at and hear these names. I appreciate your silence as we do this. For World War II, Naimi Bader, Arthur E. Blazenak, Francis G. Bowles, Stephen D. Buckus, Patrick J. Costello, Paul A. Coughlin, Coleman J. Coyne, Jr., John E. Curran, Frederick T. Deeb, George Deeb, Thomas Elias, Thomas Foley, Raymond F. Green, Donald Griffiths, Edward Groh, Joseph N.A. Grignale, Roy Hill, James Keedy, William P. Kazulis, Carlton H. Keeler, Edward W. Larson, John H. Maloney, M. Eugene McDonough, Thomas McDonough, Chester Milazewski, John W. Minkovich, Raymond O'Brien, James T. O'Leary, Joseph A. O'Laughlin, John Petratus, Robert C. Rathbun, Richard Riedel, Adam Scott Jr., Sidney Simmons, Peter J. Smith, Harold F. Stewart, Edward P. Utorka, Michael J. Wallace, John C. Winslow, Robert T. Winslow, Ernest J. Weissman, Ati J. Wari. In memory of the Korean War in the class of 1949, George Bergman, John Farron, Donald Taylor. In memory of the Vietnam War, Patrick K. Burke, John F. Concannon, Lawrence Mitchell, Richard B. Murphy, John M. Ostergren, James J. Sansone. In memory of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Specialist Keith David Benson. This concludes our Memorial Day Assembly. I'd ask at this time that as students leave to do so quietly in reflection of what you heard today. Starting with this side and the side on the left, you can please start to make your way out of the auditorium. Folks in the middle, hold on.